The hook. The space station was quiet, almost too quiet. It was the kind of silence that made even the humming of old machines sound loud. Deep inside the lonely repair dock, a human mechanic worked late, his hands covered in grease and his eyes heavy with tiredness. He had no one to talk to, no family, no crew, just broken ships and fading tools. His life was simple. Fix what came in, eat something cold from a tin, and sleep under the flickering lights of his workshop. Every day felt the same, and he thought nothing in the galaxy could surprise him anymore. But that night, something did. An alarm blared through the dock, sharp and unexpected. The mechanic jumped, dropping the wrench from his hand. A warning light flashed across the control panel, showing an unknown ship drifting toward the station. It was slow, broken, almost dead, like it had crawled through fire and war to reach him. The mechanic frowned, muttering to himself, "That's not a normal ship." He opened a docking bay, more out of curiosity than duty. As the strange craft entered, sparks flew from its torn engines, and its hull was scarred with burns and deep cuts. The mechanic's heart raced. He had seen damaged ships before, but never anything that looked like it had been hunted. When the bay doors shut, silence returned, broken only by the crackle of the ship's failing systems. He hesitated, staring at the vessel. Part of him wanted to walk away, pretend he had seen nothing, but something inside whispered that this was different, that if he left it alone, he might regret it for the rest of his life. So he picked up his tool bag, steadied his breath, and stepped inside. The interior was dark, cold, and smelled of blood and smoke. He shined his light through the narrow corridor, the beam cutting across broken panels and shattered glass. Then he heard it, a low groan, weak but alive. The mechanic froze, his skin crawling. Someone was inside. He followed the sound until he reached the cockpit, and there she was, an alien warrior, slumped against the seat, her armor cracked and bleeding from wounds that no human could survive. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, strange and beautiful, her eyes glowing a soft, haunting blue. She looked at him, barely able to lift her head. "Help me," she whispered, her voice rough, broken, yet powerful. The mechanic stood frozen, his mind racing. He had never seen her kind before, not in person, maybe in distant news, maybe in rumors told by pilots, but never this close. And she was no ordinary traveler. He could feel it, the way she stared at him, like he was her last chance. The mechanic's first thought was to run. This was not his problem, not his fight. But then, he looked again at her wounds, the way her breath struggled, the way her hand clutched her weapon as if death itself was chasing her. Something inside him shifted. He could not just leave her there. So, he slowly moved closer, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "Easy," he said softly. "I'll help you, but you need to stay still." Her eyes never left him, sharp and suspicious, yet desperate. He pulled open his bag, grabbing what little medical supplies he had. They were made for humans, but he hoped they would work. With shaking hands, he patched her wounds, cleaned the blood, and sealed what he could. The alien groaned, but she did not push him away. Instead, she allowed him to work, her breathing steadying little by little. When he finished, the mechanic stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. Her eyes narrowed, studying him, testing him. "You, human," she said, her voice trembling but clear enough. "Why help?" The mechanic had no answer, not a good one. He could only shrug and whisper, "Because you asked." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, two strangers from two worlds, trapped in the same silence. Finally, the alien's eyes closed, exhaustion pulling her into sleep. The mechanic exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath the whole time. He looked at her again, lying broken yet alive, and a thought came to him. Who was she, and what danger had brought her here? The ship was damaged beyond recognition, and the weapons on her armor told him she was no ordinary traveler. Whoever had hunted her, they would not stop until they found her. The mechanic glanced at the bay doors, half expecting shadows to appear at any moment. He did not know it yet, but by saving her, He had just stepped into a war that was far larger than his quiet life. And nothing in his world would ever be the same again. The repair and trust. The mechanic did not sleep that night. He sat in his workshop, his eyes never leaving the strange alien resting on the repair table. Her breathing was shallow, but steady now, her wounds sealed by his clumsy hands. Every sound in the station felt louder than usual, every flicker of light sharper, as if the universe itself was watching what he had done. He had saved a life, but he had no idea whose life it really was. The mechanic rose from his chair and walked around her damaged armor, his eyes scanning the strange design. It was nothing like human tech. It was layered, alive, almost glowing faintly with a soft light that pulsed like a heartbeat. He touched the cracked plates gently, and for a moment, the armor responded, shifting slightly under his hand as if it was breathing with her. He pulled back quickly, his heart racing. "What are you?" he whispered to himself. As if she had heard, the alien stirred, her glowing eyes opening just enough to catch his movement. "Don't touch," she muttered weakly, her hand reaching for the weapon that never left her side. The mechanic raised his hands at once. All right. No touching, just trying to fix things." She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes sharp even in weakness, before letting her hand fall back to her side. He sighed and returned to his bench, pulling out tools, wires, and welding gear. If her ship was going to fly again, he would need to work fast. Piece by piece, he began repairing the alien craft, tightening bolts, sealing fuel lines, welding cracks along the scorched frame. The work was hard, but his hands knew what to do. They moved as if the tools were part of him. The silence between them stretched, but slowly it began to change. Every now and then, she would speak, short words, broken phrases enough to guide him. "Don't cut that wire," she whispered once, her voice barely above a breath. "It powers the shield core." Another time, when his welding flame touched the wrong plate, she snapped, "Too hot. You will kill the metal." He almost laughed at that, shaking his head. "Metal's already dead, lady." Her lips twitched, the faintest ghost of a smile, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The mechanic worked for hours, his body aching, but his mind racing with questions. Who was she, really? Why did her armor look like it carried secrets older than human history? Why did her enemies hunt her so fiercely? Finally, when he could not hold it back any longer, he asked, "So who are you?" The alien opened her eyes again, fixing him with that strange, unblinking stare. She hesitated, as if the truth was a blade too sharp to share. Then she said softly, "A soldier. Nothing more." The mechanic frowned, not believing her. No ordinary soldier carried living armor. No ordinary soldier flew a ship that bled light when broken. But he did not push, not yet. Instead, he nodded. "All right, soldier, then let's get your ship flying before whoever shot you down comes back." Her eyes lingered on him for a moment longer, then slowly closed, exhaustion pulling her under again. He returned to his work, but the words stuck in his head. "A soldier," she had said, but his gut told him she was lying, or at least hiding something greater. Hours later, as he tightened the last plate and sealed the hull, the mechanic felt it again. That same whisper inside him, the one that had told him not to walk away. This woman, this alien, was dangerous, yes, but she was also important. And somehow, in some impossible way, his life was now tied to hers. He looked over at her one more time, asleep but alive, and whispered into the still air of his workshop, "You're not just a soldier." He did not know it yet, but trust was already forming between them, fragile as glass, strong as steel, a trust that would soon decide both their fates. The danger arrives. The mechanic thought the station was safe. He told himself the damaged alien ship was hidden well enough, the warrior asleep and healing, but deep inside, he knew danger had not gone away. It had only been delayed. The silence of the station grew heavy, too heavy, like the calm before a storm. Then it came. A low, beeping sound echoed through the control panel, sharp and cold. The mechanic rushed to check, and his heart sank. Multiple signals, moving fast, ships approaching from the dark edge of space. They were small and fast, hunters, not traders. He cursed under his breath, gripping the console so hard his knuckles went white. "They found her," he whispered. Inside the workshop, the alien stirred, her eyes opening at once, as if she had already known this moment would come. Her voice was weak, but her words were steady. "They are here." The mechanic turned to her, panic in his voice. "Who are they? What do they want?" Her glowing eyes locked on his, and she said only, "My death." The words chilled him more than the alarms. He thought of throwing her out, leaving her for the hunters, but the thought burned him inside. It was not who he was. Instead, he slammed his hand on the controls and shut down every light in the dock. Darkness swallowed the station, leaving only the faint glow of the alien's eyes. Outside, the hunters closed in, their ships sliding like shadows across the void, scanning beams slicing through the black, searching, hunting. The mechanic's heart pounded in his chest, each beat louder than the silence. He crouched beside the alien, whispering, "Stay quiet, don't make a sound." But she shook her head, her voice sharp despite her weakness. "Hiding will not save you. If they enter, you will die." The words hit him like a blade. Still, he could not stop. He grabbed a spanner and checked the security doors, as if a few bolts could hold back the storm. Through the station windows, the hunter ships circled closer, their engines humming like predators growling in the dark. Then came the voice, cold and mechanical, echoing through the comm system. "This is Captain Jorvak of the Dominion Hunters. We know she is here. Hand over the fugitive, and we will spare you, human." The mechanic froze, sweat rolling down his neck. He looked at the alien, lying weak but proud, her hand tight around her weapon. She whispered, "Do not trust them, they lie. They always lie." The mechanic already knew she was right. Still, fear crawled inside him. He could stay silent, and they would break in any way, or he could answer, and maybe buy time. Slowly, he turned on the comm, his voice shaky but steady enough to speak. "This is just a repair dock. I don't know what you're talking about." The silence that followed felt endless. Then the voice came again, colder this time. "You hide her, and you will burn with her." The hunter ships spread out, forming a cage around the station, their weapons charging, lights glowing like red eyes in the dark. The mechanic's stomach twisted. He turned to the alien. "They'll kill us both." Her reply was simple, calm, like it was already decided, then fight. The word echoed inside him, fight. He was no soldier, just a mechanic, but when he looked at her, this broken warrior who still spoke of fighting even at death's door, something changed inside him. He tightened his grip on the spanner, his jaw set. The hunters thought they had found easy prey, but they were wrong. In the dark workshop of a lonely station, a human and a dying queen were about to fight back. And for the first time, the mechanic realized his quiet life was over. Danger had arrived, and there was no turning back. The battle test. The hunters did not wait long. The first blast shook the station, a beam of red light slicing across the outer hull, metal groaning under the heat. The mechanic staggered, gripping the railing, his heart pounding like a drum inside his chest. "They're boarding," he whispered. The alien warrior pushed herself upright, her body still weak, but her eyes blazing with cold fire. "Then we kill them before they kill us," she said, her voice low but steady. The mechanic swallowed hard, gripping the heavy spanner in his hand. He had no gun, no armor, only the tools of his trade, but in that moment, he refused to back down. The first hunter breached the airlock with a hiss of smoke, armored head to toe, rifle glowing in the dark. The mechanic reacted on instinct, swinging a welding torch to life, the flame bursting bright blue. He sprayed the torch across the hunter's visor, the glass hissing and cracking. The alien moved at the same time, faster than the mechanic could believe. She lunged with her blade, a curved weapon that seemed to sing as it cut, and the hunter dropped before he even fired a shot. The mechanic gasped, his hands shaking, but there was no time to think. More shadows poured in, heavy boots thundering across the floor. The mechanic darted behind a console, pulling loose wires free, sparks showering as he jammed them against the metal floor. When the hunters stepped onto the plate, electricity surged, knocking two of them down in violent spasms. "Not bad," the alien muttered, before leaping into the fight again, her blade flashing like a storm of light. The mechanic grabbed an old drone from the shelf, slamming a battery into its side. The machine whirred to life, wobbling in the air, and he sent it crashing into another hunter, its small welding arms stabbing again and again into exposed joints. The alien caught the last attacker with her bare hands, slamming him into the wall so hard the metal cracked. She stood tall now, blood dripping from her wounds, but her eyes burned brighter than before. The mechanic stared, breathing hard, his chest on fire from fear and adrenaline. He had never seen anyone fight like that, not even in the vids. Even broken, even half dead, she moved like a predator born for battle. And yet, she had fought beside him, not instead of him. When the last body fell, silence returned, heavy and sharp. The mechanic dropped the spanner, his hands trembling. That was insane, he muttered. The alien wiped blood from her face, her voice calm. "You fight with scraps and fire, yet you fight well." The mechanic almost laughed, his nerves broken. "Yeah, I fix things, not people." But she shook her head slowly. "No, you fix what others would throw away. That is strength." Her words hit him harder than any blast. For a moment, the two of them stood in the wreckage, surrounded by smoke and sparks. The mechanic realized the truth. He had survived a battle against trained hunters, not because of luck, but because together they had become something more. And though he did not know it yet, the galaxy would soon learn what one human and one dying queen could do when they stood as one. The reveal. The station was filled with smoke. Sparks still hissed from broken wires, the air heavy with the smell of burned metal and blood. The mechanic leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, his hands trembling from the fight. He had survived, but barely. His eyes drifted over the fallen hunters, their armored bodies scattered across the floor. Something strange caught his attention. One of the hunters had died with his helmet torn open, his lips frozen in his last word. And that word was not a curse, not a threat, but something else. "Your Majesty." The mechanic froze, the sound replaying in his head. "Your Majesty." He turned sharply toward the alien warrior, who now stood tall among the wreckage, her blade still glowing faintly. She met his eyes, calm and unreadable. But he could see it now, the way she carried herself, the way even her enemies had spoken of her with fear and respect. "You're not a soldier," the mechanic said, his voice low, almost accusing. "They called you something else." The alien did not answer, her glowing eyes narrowing. The mechanic stepped closer, pointing at the fallen hunter. He said, "Your Majesty." "Why would he call you that? Who are you really?" Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, her jaw tightened, her voice sharp. "You saved me, and for that, I will give you truth." She tore off the broken plate of her armor, revealing a symbol etched into the metal beneath, glowing faint gold. The mechanic stared, his breath catching. He had seen that symbol before, not in person, but in reports, old vids, whispered tales of a kingdom far beyond human borders. It was the crest of the Valari Empire. Her voice broke the silence, strong now, her weakness forgotten. "I am Queen Serenia of Valari, last of the crown, hunted by my own council, betrayed by those sworn to protect me." The mechanic's heart nearly stopped. A queen. He had been patching wounds and welding armor for a queen. The alien's gaze was hard as steel, her words heavy. "My empire bleeds, my throne stolen, my people scattered, and yet I still live." The mechanic shook his head, his voice cracking. "You're saying you're the ruler of one of the most feared empires in the quadrant?" Her silence was the answer. He staggered back, his mind spinning. All the risk, the hunters, the ships circling the station. It was not for a soldier, not for some runaway, but for a queen. The mechanic pressed his hands to his face, muttering, "I should have thrown you back out that door." But when he looked at her again, he couldn't mean it. Her eyes burned not with arrogance, but with pain, with a fire that refused to die. "You saved me," she said again, her tone softer now. "When even my blood tried to end me, you chose to help. Do you understand what that means?" The mechanic didn't answer, his voice locked in his throat. He had no idea what it meant, not yet, but deep inside he knew one thing. His quiet life of fixing ships was gone, and the moment she spoke her name, he had stepped into a storm that would change the galaxy. And he could never go back. The choice. The workshop was quiet again. The bodies had been dragged aside, the broken doors sealed, but the silence did not feel safe anymore. The mechanic sat at his bench, staring at his grease-covered hands, handmade for fixing machines, not fighting wars. Across the room, the alien queen stood tall, her armor cracked but her presence unshaken. For a long time, neither of them spoke, the weight of what had just happened pressing down like a heavy chain. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice steady. "My ship can fly again, but not without help." The mechanic looked up, his throat dry. "Help? You mean me?" Her glowing eyes fixed on him, sharp and unblinking. "Yes, I cannot pilot alone, and I cannot fight this war without allies." The mechanic laughed bitterly, running a hand through his messy hair. "You've got the wrong guy, Your Majesty. I fix engines, I clean out fuel lines, I'm not a warrior." But her gaze did not soften. "You fought beside me. You stood when others would have run. That is more than most soldiers I have known." Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. He wanted to deny it, wanted to go back to the life he knew, fixing broken ships, eating cold food, sleeping in silence, safe and forgotten. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "Safe, yes, but empty." The mechanic stood and paced the room, his steps restless. "If I go with you, I'm dead. If I stay here, maybe they don't come back. Maybe I live." The queen's eyes followed him, her voice lower now, almost gentle. "If you stay, they will come again. Not for me, for you. Because you chose to protect me." The words froze him in place. She was right. He knew it. Even if he stayed, the hunters would not forget. The Dominion would not forgive. The queen stepped closer, her presence powerful yet calm. "I do not command you, mechanic. I ask you. Fight with me. Stand with me. Not as servant, not as subject, but as ally." The mechanic stared at her, stunned. A queen asking him for help, lowering herself to the level of a simple human. He turned away, his chest heavy, fear clawing at him. If he left, he would face death, war, and enemies far beyond anything he knew. If he stayed, his quiet life would rot into nothing, his days wasted in silence, his nights haunted by the choice he never took. Finally, his hands clenched into fists, his voice shaking. "I don't want this, I never asked for this." The queen's reply was soft, almost a whisper, "Neither did I. Yet here we stand." The mechanic closed his eyes, breathing hard. He thought of the hunters' faces, of the way they had called her Majesty even as they died, of the fire in her eyes when she fought, and of the moment he chose to save her when he could have walked away. That choice had already tied his fate to hers, whether he admitted it or not. Slowly, he turned back to her, his voice rough but steady. "If I go, I can't promise I'll be brave. I can't promise I'll be strong." The queen inclined her head, the faintest sign of respect. "I do not need a hero. I need someone who will not abandon me." The mechanic let out a long, shaky breath, and for the first time in his life, he felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. He looked at her, at the queen who stood broken yet unyielding, and finally said the words that sealed his path. "All right, I'll go." The ending cliffhanger. The mechanic's hands shook as he tightened the last bolts on the queen's ship. The hull was still scarred, the engine still weak, but it was alive again, ready to fly. He stepped back, staring at it, knowing that once he left this station, there was no turning back. For years, this had been his home, a prison of routine and silence, and now it felt smaller than ever. The queen stood beside him, her armor cracked, but her presence strong. "You are certain?" she asked, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The mechanic swallowed, his throat dry, then nodded. "I'm certain." She inclined her head, a gesture of respect. Not command, not demand, but recognition. Together, they stepped onto the ship, the doors hissing shut behind them. The mechanic sat in the co-pilot's chair, his heart hammering, while the Queen slid into the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the strange, glowing controls. The ship rumbled, engines coughing, then roaring back to life. Lights flared across the console, and for the first time in days, hope flickered in the mechanic's chest. As the ship rose from the dock, the station shrinking behind them, he felt a weight lift and fall at the same time. He was leaving everything he knew, but he was stepping into something far greater. The stars opened before them, endless, dangerous, beautiful. For a brief moment, silence filled the cockpit, calm, almost peaceful. Then the scanners lit up, dozens of signals, moving fast, forming patterns no trader fleet ever made. The Queen's eyes narrowed, her jaw tight. They already know, they are waiting. The mechanic leaned forward, his breath catching. Through the viewport, the stars shifted, and then he saw them. A vast shape in the dark, a fleet, silent and patient, like wolves waiting for prey. The Dominion had not given up, they had gathered, and they were ready. The mechanic's stomach twisted, fear rising, but when he glanced at the Queen, she was calm, her eyes glowing brighter than before. "This is only the beginning," she said softly, her voice carrying both fire and sorrow. The mechanic gripped the controls, his voice low but steady. "Then let's make sure it's a beginning they'll never forget." The ship surged forward, cutting into the dark, straight toward the waiting storm. And in that moment, the galaxy shifted, though it did not yet know it. One human mechanic and one hunted queen had joined paths, and the war was no longer theirs alone. It was everyone's.